As we've interviewed people, we've discovered something incredible. Miracles transcend boundaries. In fact, no matter someone's background or religious beliefs, a Newsweek poll found that 84% of Americans believe in miracles.
But here's the thing. We are not priests. We're not pastors or religious scholars. We're just two sisters who love God and love miracles. So we thought it would be fascinating if we sat down with different religious leaders to see what they teach about miracles. This is the Miracle Files. I'm Emily Jones.
And I'm Holly Worthington. We're two sisters who love a captivating true story, but we're also seeking more light in our lives.
So we're on a mission to find and share unforgettable, uplifting stories of God's miracles. We hope you'll join us on this journey.
Today our guest is Rabbi Yaakov Menken. Rabbi Menken is the Executive Vice President of the Coalition for Jewish Values. He's the founder and director of Project Genesis. He's been published in Fox News, Newsweek, The Federalist, The New York Observer, and others. He's also the author of the Everything Torah book. Welcome, Rabbi Yaakov.
I'm glad to be with you.
Thank you so much for being here. So I'll be honest with you, I don't know a lot about the Jewish religion. I know a little bit. Are you Orthodox Jewish or?
Observant, for the traditional, what Judaism always looked like. The truth is that all the modern movements are a 200 and some odd year old invention, which is a blip on the radar when you look at the length of history and Jewish history in particular.
Yeah.
I actually was a wedding videographer, so I filmed an Orthodox Jewish wedding, and it was amazing. I mean, it was so impressive, and the amount of scripture that they had memorized in Hebrew, and I was so impressed by everything I saw. But maybe you can enlighten us a little bit more about the Jewish faith. I know that you believe in miracles in the Old Testament, the parting of the Red Sea, Jonah and the whale. And
so many miracles in the Old Testament.
Yeah. So can you tell us what the Jewish faith believes about miracles? And also, do you believe miracles still happen today?
Yes, miracles happen at every moment. That's the short answer. Judaism regards our very existence is something that God is doing. And not that God did. No, there's no past tense in that. We actually read, now I'm going to say it and I'm going to translate it, Mechadesh b'chol yom tamid maisa bereishis, who renews in every day, always or constantly, the work of creation. Yeah. That's part of our morning prayers. That phrase that I pulled out is right there in daily prayers. That this concept that at every moment God is renewing the work of creation. So even the air we breathe is a miracle. The fact that our bodies continue to function properly is a miracle. We actually have a blessing of gratitude every time we use the bathroom correctly. Because when a person is filled with vessels and orifices, and if any of them go wrong, all of a sudden a person can no longer survive. And so we are enjoined to continue remembering and thinking about this idea that life itself is a miracle. And so, yes, of course, we see miracles all around us.
It sounds like you live in a lot of gratitude, which is really beautiful.
That is a very important place to be. I think that's one thing that if we think that everything is coming to us and we expect more, you live a very different life because you're looking at all the things you don't have. When you live a life of gratitude, you're looking at life and thinking about all the things that you do have. And it's a much better place to be.
I would definitely agree that our lives and just existence are miracles.
So how would you define a miracle?
Well, what we regard as a miracle is when something goes off the charts, as it were. Meaning to say that since everything is a miracle, it's all a matter of a judgment call when you see something that is really like, oh, that should not have happened that way, and yet it did. And, recently, I was just yesterday speaking to someone who, I asked how he's doing. And he says, oh, I'm getting better, day by day. And I had understood that this fellow had an illness from which one is not meant to recover. And he's recovering. That's a miracle, That's the type of thing, that you don't expect.
It is amazing to me that, so many people, regardless of their religious faith, believe in miracles. And that's something that kind of, we discussed it earlier, that it transcends boundaries. We all kind of share this belief in miracles. So one question I would have for you is, have you experienced any really powerful miracles in your own life that you would be willing to share with us?
Meeting my wife.
That is a great miracle.
Very complicated miracle. Seeing my kids meet their spouses. I remember, it being described to me by a rabbi, the fact that I progressed so quickly in my studies. If I started as an adult, I started at the age of 18 to be observant, and at the age of 20 to really start studying. And that is something that the whole concept of Jewish schooling is, that we start a child off from preschool level learning Judaism and learning Jewish texts as part of study every single day up to the high school years and then into college. So how does a guy come in at the age of 20 and catch up to that? So, and he said to me, that he quoted an aphorism from Jewish thought that is the one who owns the miracle, the one who went through the miracle, is the last person to recognize the miracle. In rough translation of what he said. Just the fact that I can make my way through the books behind me is complicated. And I shouldn't have been able to accomplish that if not for God shepherding me along the way.
Yeah. So we always hear the term divine intervention. Is that something, like, would you use that term, or is that? Yes, divine intervention. Yeah, that works with us. That is awesome. There are certain terms we can tell you, the ones that are uniquely Christian when they come up, but sure. That is definitely not one. The divine intervention is all there. Yeah. Hashgacha pratit is like particular supervision is almost a more precise translation of that. Like that somebody's watching over that, person at that moment, or obviously the divine was watching over that person at that moment. Yeah. I mean, the whole point of this concept of hashgacha pratis is that every individual experiences that God really is watching over each of us. Yeah, I would definitely agree.
So why do you think miracles happen, or what is the point of miracles?
Well, it's built into the world, as I said. Everything is a miracle, so therefore every moment we wouldn't be here without that constant refresh on the universe. And at the same time, these, there's no question that sometimes these miracles happen because God has a greater purpose. There's something special there that, there was a situation where, the only two people walked off that plane crash, and, there was something there. There was some reason.
It's interesting that so many people see these amazing miracles and just want to say, oh, I'm going to credit it to just coincidence. Or have you seen all the bad things that are happening in the world too? And there's so many people that just want to explain away a miracle through science or coincidence. And so what would your response be to when people just say, oh, well, bad things are happening too, or, not everything ends up being a miracle?
There is definitely, obviously there's bad things happening in the world. And, we regard as everything having a purpose, even the bad things, when we've seen a Holocaust in Jewish history, so we know what bad things look like. But there's always a divine purpose, and there's obviously a psychological resistance to acknowledging a miracle. That when people want to live their own lives, and a lot of it is the idea that you're subjugated to an ultimate authority. If there's somebody watching over you who wants something better for you or from you, your failure to deliver on that becomes something that you have to deal with and think about. It's easier to say that life is up to me. I can do whatever I want. And, that's a great way to, you live your life with total freedom to do whatever you want. Your overriding religious principle becomes don't get caught. That's not it. That's not, the point is that when your authority is a real authority, when it's God, he knows what's going on in the bedroom when nobody else is watching you. So, there's no such thing as don't get caught. You were caught the moment it happened. Yeah.
So what would you say about
true.
science? Would you also say science and miracles coincide? How would you describe a Jewish perspective on science?
Well, it's colored a little bit by my background. I'm a science person.
Yeah.
My degree is in computer science. I not only did physics and chemistry, I also did biology, and so you see when you look at what the Medrash says about, for example, Adam and Eve were 20 years old when they were created. Meaning biologically, they were adults. They were adult people walking around. They were not babies who needed care, guidance, feeding, changes of diapers, etc. The universe in which they were found, the fact that it looks to be 15 billion years old is not a contradiction. According to us, that's what it's supposed to look like. It is supposed to be that the universe is also adult. In fact, it would not make sense for a 20-year-old Adam and Eve encountering adult trees and adult animals to be walking on an earth that was 5 days old. So it's the fact that it looks 5 billion years old that is, again, not a contradiction. That's a pretty not short answer to the science and Bible question, from our perspective.
So you could be Jewish and you could be a scientist, and
there's a lot who are.
Yeah, I'm sure there are.
Evolutionary biologists are a self-selecting group somehow. But the rest of the sciences are filled, there's plenty of observant Jewish physicists and astronomers. And I actually had the wife of a friend of mine. I knew the friend before he got married. The wife joked later that she was having problems with technical support. And she said to the guy, "Don't tell me that you have to be a rocket scientist to understand this, because I'm a rocket scientist."
Oh, okay. So we are Christian, and many of our listeners are Christian.
I figured that.
I was just wondering, what do you want Christians to know about Judaism?
It's interesting. Mike Huckabee, several years ago, long before he was nominated to be the new ambassador to Israel, he said, Jews can go through life not having a whole lot of familiarity with Christians, but Christians can't go through life without having a familiarity with Judaism, because,
Right.
Jesus was a Jew. The founding fathers used the book of Deuteronomy more than any other source text for the ideas that they were using to form America. A first world civilization depends on certain biblical ideas. And those are ideas that we share.
Yeah.
The value of human life, choosing peace over warfare, universal education, universal justice, social responsibility, charity, the value of family, they're all built in.
So we have a lot more in common than probably people even realize.
Okay, one more question I have for you is, if you were to just pick your favorite miracle in the Old Testament, or anytime.
Well, hey, start with what I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the stories about the fish and things, but, obviously the revelation at Sinai, the number of miracles on which, that surround all of that, the 40 years in the desert, that's, those were the biggest biblical miracles. Those were, an entire nation confronting the voice of God. To the point where the people said, "Moses, we can't handle it. You have to go. You go listen, and you tell us what God says. We believe it, because we've heard God speak now, and it's too much for us." So that was obviously miracles. The whole thing of being surrounded, having clouds of glory, fire by night, clouds by day, all of the protections, God's divine presence descending on the tabernacle. all of these things, which we don't see today. And that was all, at one point happening together.
Pretty amazing.
Miraculous
time.
food every morning.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
Manna.
That's
Wouldn't
right.
that be interesting?
Speaking of, manna was perfect food. Every molecule was digested.
Yeah.
There was no need to excrete afterwards. So this is all, like that. Think
Really?
about
I didn't know
that as a
that.
miracle. That's it. That's in our medrash.
Wow. Well, is there anything else you would like to share with us about your thoughts?
I think I really do think we covered, miracles pretty well. I mean, even the negative, even the ones that, don't work out the way we would like them to. Because we don't know what's going on upstairs. There's a reason, we don't know what it is. And, one day we will learn. So.
Yeah.
Well, it is such an honor to speak with you. I love to, just learn more about other religions and cultures, and really to find our common ground and the things that we can share and the things that we can appreciate together. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today.
Sure.
I just have to ask you, how do you say miracle in Hebrew?
Nes.
Okay.
Nes is the spelling in English characters. Yeah,
okay,
nes.
so we could be the
I'm remembering, there was some case where an entire building fell during the first Gulf War, when Saddam Hussein was firing Scud missiles at Israel, and one after the other was landing and nobody was dying. And there was a woman in a building, and the entire building was destroyed, and she didn't have a scratch. And the reporter on TV or radio, the radio reporter, I know this story because there was an observant fellow riding in the back of a taxi being driven by an apparently secular Israeli. And the reporter asks the woman, "What do you think about this miracle you just experienced?" She walks away without a scratch from the building falling all around her. And she says, "Nes, mapitom nes." A miracle? What do you mean it's a miracle? That's what happened. And the taxi driver said to the fellow in the back, "She doesn't know what she's talking about. She's still in shock. Wait until she wakes up from the trauma and realizes that she experienced a miracle, because it's obvious that what she experienced was a miracle and she just wasn't prepared to accept it."
Yeah. A lot of people recognize miracles easier than others. And some people just, no matter what happens, they're just always going to say it wasn't a miracle. So
there you go.
It just depends. Okay, well, before we head out, will you share your favorite scripture or prayer in Hebrew with us? Or
favorite prayer.
A favorite. Will you share
a favorite? I think about the paragraph of the Shema. "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." That first paragraph of Shema, which women at least recite it once a day, men have to say it twice a day. That passage right in there has "Vishinantam lefanecha v'dibartam." You should teach it to your children and you should speak about them. It's a parental obligation to educate the next generation. That's part of the whole mission of forming a family, is you have kids, you have a next generation, you teach the next generation right from wrong. And so that makes it a favorite passage, both in the way it's constructed and what it tells us to do.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
I love it.
Yeah, we really appreciate you.
Yeah, it has been great to talk with you.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day to you and all your listeners.
Thank you for joining us. If you have a miracle to share, contact us at themiraclefiles.com or find us on Facebook.
We're now releasing multiple episodes each month, so subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and YouTube for amazing video content as well.
Join us next time as we discover more of God's miracles. And don't forget to look for His light in your own lives.